Welcome to episode 24 of The Writing Coach. I'm your host, Kevin Johns, and on this podcast, I speak with the instructors, editors, coaches, and mentors that help writers and authors create their art, build their audience, and sell their work. In this episode, I speak small press publishing with Carolyn Frechette.
The writer in its natural habitat, I finally got it.
I don't believe in drills. As a former teacher, I believe in authentic writing and really getting into your story.
I think it's each one of our responsibilities that when we learn a particular craft, I think it's kind of your responsibility to share it so that we can take storytelling to a new level.
My mom doesn't understand. My dog just doesn't seem to get it when I talk to him. But when I go to my mastermind group, they get it. They understand we speak common language.
Keep writing, keep creating, never ever stop. Life doesn't stop, so we gotta keep on creating to continue creating the life that we want to create.
You're listening to The Writing Coach. 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 The Writing Coach.
Hello, beloved listeners, and welcome back to The Writing Coach. It's your host, author, and writing coach, and ghostwriter, Kevin Johns here. I'm really excited about this episode, actually, because after 6 months of technical difficulties, The Writing Coach is back on iTunes. I've been updating episodes throughout the last few months, but they haven't been showing up on iTunes, but now they're finally there. So if you're someone who's only ever listened to the show through your iTunes feed, go and take a look and you'll see there's 7 or 8 episodes that all went live last week. Tons of great stuff in there, good interviews with good people. Now, this is an interesting episode because I want to bring back someone on the show who's been on the show before, author and writing coach Carolyn Frechette. But I want to get Carolyn on the show today to talk about her publishing house, a small press in Ottawa called Renaissance Press. And the reason I wanted to get her talking about her press on the show is that I've been working with a lot of authors lately who are trying to make this decision of where they're going to go with their career. How are they going to publish their books? And I think in a lot of people's minds, there's only 2 routes to getting a book published. Route 1, we'll call it the traditional route. You query agents, you get a literary agent, that agent pitches your manuscript to the big publishing houses in New York, you get a big publishing deal, and your career is off from there. Or you self-publish and you take it all on your own shoulders and do everything yourself. I find a lot of the authors that I'm working with sit down and they look at these 2 options. They're like, geez, I don't know which one is right for me. And they think it's this binary that they have to choose one or the other, when in fact there's this whole other route out there of medium press and small press publishers, which is an entirely other way of getting your book published. And as I think you'll see in the interview with Carolyn today, there are a lot of benefits to going with a small publisher. In some ways, it can be the best of both worlds, the control and the flexibility and speed of self-publishing mixed with the support and the expertise and the community that a traditional publisher is going to bring to the publishing process. So I know a lot of you listeners listening to this show are working on your first manuscript and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with it once you complete it. And so I think it's really important that you have as much information as possible about the options that are available to you out there. So with that in mind, let's cut to a fantastic interview with Carolyn Frechette, where we talk about the benefits of small press publishing. We talk about what is a small press. We talk a little bit about the legality of signing publishing contracts. We talk about what a small press publisher might bring to the marketing side of things. We talk about timelines for publishing and the route that Carolyn thinks authors might want to take in their publishing careers. So let's cut to that interview now. All right, today on the show, I have writing coach, author, publisher, Carolyn Frechette. Carolyn, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
So you have 2 kids and a dog. I've got 3 kids, all of whom are running around in the background of both our houses right now. So we might have some interesting background noise for the interview.
Yeah.
The exciting life of the writer, publisher, parent.
Yes, indeed.
So I had you on the show previously, I mean, almost a year ago probably, where we talked about your work as a writing coach. But I wanted to get you back on the show because, as I said, in addition to being a writing coach and an author yourself, you also help run a publisher. Can you tell me a little bit about Renaissance Press?
So Renaissance Press is an Ottawa-based publisher, and we specialize in publishing local authors. We're a small co-op, meaning that we're a bunch of volunteers. There's about 8 or 9 of us at last count. Editors, graphic designers, writers who just got together and started publishing our own work and expanded into publishing other people's work. So we're kind of traditional in a way that authors pitch to us, they submit their manuscripts, and if we accept them, we do everything for them. But, authors don't have to pay anything. We pay them royalties just like any other publishing house would.
So what is a co-op? So if I've never heard of... like I said before we hit record here, the reason I wanted to have this conversation was because I think a lot of authors have this misconception that there's 2 routes to publishing. Either you get a big literary agent and you go with a big New York publishing house and you sell your book in Barnes & Noble and Chapters, or, you self-publish to Kindle, and that is basically the 2 routes. And the reason I wanted to get you on the show was because there's this whole other world of medium and small press publishers out there. So what is a small press, particularly your co-op model, and how does that differ from Random House in New York?
Well, first of all, we're very much smaller than something like Random House. And all the people involved are volunteers. So they're really, really passionate about their work, and they're doing it mostly out of love of publishing and books. So when people publish through us, we don't have like huge budgets to print like 1 million copies of a book, but you get a lot more of a personal touch in your book. We consult the author on every step of the way. Like the author often gets the final word on things like cover design, how the book looks. And every time we correct, we never just put edits into the book. We suggest a bunch of things, and then we let the author decide whether or not they want to implement the edits. So we have a lot more of a personal touch. We're kind of, it has kind of a family feeling, like a community feeling.
And I think one of the things, people think in order to get a publisher, they have to get a literary agent, and then when they sign that contract, they lose all control of their book. Whereas a small press like Renaissance, as you just said, it's the complete opposite, right? You don't need an agent to approach you guys and pitch a great manuscript to you. And as you said, the author is highly involved in the creative process.
Exactly. We've never received so far a submission from an agent. So people pitch to us at conventions. Like a lot of the time we hold pitch sessions at CanCon, and otherwise people can just go through our websites. We have very clear guidelines that they can use to submit their manuscript to us, and we receive them by email. And then we have a committee that decides. There's 4 people on the committee, and they each read the manuscript and they decide whether or not it's a fit for us. And when that happens, we really, really want the author to be involved. Like, we are all authors, all of us that run the press. So we understand how emotionally involved you can be in your own manuscript and your own book. And it's really important to us that our authors are happy with the work that we do, because it's their baby.
It's sure. I've been a big advocate of self-publishing. All 5 of my books have been self-published, and I came from this punk rock background of, my publishing career really kicked off when I kind of, there's a while there where I was like, oh, I do need to get an agent, and I do need to get a publisher. And then I had this epiphany where I was like, well, that's not how we approached our band when I was a punk band. We never wanted to sign a big deal with Geffen Records. We just just wanted to put out our own records and play shows and be a cool punk band. And once I started approaching my publishing in that manner, where I said, hey, I'm going to approach my publishing in a punk rock manner. I'm going to control everything, do it all myself. My publishing career really took off. But that said, having 5 books out now and, doing a lot of work to try to promote them and build an author career and developing friendships with folks like you guys, more and more I'm seeing the benefit of being part of a press and part of a community. You guys have been really kind in that, you've often welcomed me to share a table with you, with the Renaissance Press crew at shows. And, there's little things that I've noticed that I never considered before about working with a team and a community and having a publisher. Just stuff like, if I have my own table at a con, I'm there selling my book all day. And if I leave the table, nobody's there selling my book and I need to be there all day. Whereas you guys have this team atmosphere where you've got the authors themselves plus everyone on the Renaissance team, and you put together a schedule and you rotate through the con, so people aren't stuck sitting at a table for 8 hours a day for a long weekend or whatever. And it's a little example of something I've seen that's really made me realize the power of going with a small press.
Definitely. It's a lot less exhausting, for one thing, because when you self-publish, you have to do everything by yourself. And that's a lot of work. Like, putting out a book is a huge amount of work. And because we have a team, we can share the workload, and it allows us to really, really do a good job, first of all, because we're not like overwhelmed with everything else, but, not burn out also, because, we pass the candle, like everybody does their share, and then it happens. And another advantage also is we have such a different strengths, all of us. Some of us are illustrators and graphic designers, and other people are very, very good at correcting books. And even in our editors, we have people who are really good at structural editing. We have people who are excellent at spelling and line edits for style. And we have people who are just really, really nuts about grammar. So if you go through all these editors instead of maybe hiring just one, and you're not sure whether what their strengths are and if they match your weaknesses, then you're for sure catching everything and making the manuscript as good as it can be.
That's such a great point. That's the thing about self-publishing, where you need to become an expert in everything, right? Exactly. I mean, even if you're not doing the editing or doing the book design, you need to at least know how to hire an editor and know whether they're a good one. And you need to have some sort of sense of design understanding when choosing a good cover designer and whatnot. And it's really, it's like taking on 3 or 4 or 5 other jobs. And there was a time where I was fine with that. I kind of wanted that control. But the more I publish, the more my kids get older and I get older and I run things like time and energy, the more I think, it would be really nice to have some help along the way. And I think that's what a small press offers. And in some ways, it's the best of both worlds, right? It's the best of the indie world in terms of kind of control and whatnot, but also best in terms of going traditional, in that you do have a contract and that you have a team of people helping you.
Exactly. Definitely. And I know that in self-publishing, you get a bigger share of the overall royalties, because obviously you have, you don't have the intermediate of a publisher that's taking a certain percentage. But at the same time, things like editing and cover design and purchasing copies of your books, they're expensive, and paying for tables at cons. And so I think that financially speaking, you're better off going with a publisher that's willing to pay for all these things. And the 15% that you get, or the 40% that you get, depending on what format, comes off better for you.
Yeah, I mean, financially, self-publishing is a huge risk. It's an entrepreneurial endeavor, right? And most entrepreneurial endeavors fail, and they usually require at least some sort of financial investment up front. So as you said, if you're if you're self-publishing and you're hiring an editor and you're hiring a designer and hiring a cover designer, that can be a big chunk that you're investing up front. That going with a small press, it reduces the risk, I suppose, for authors, right? I guess as a small press, you're sharing a bit of that risk up front.
Exactly.
If there's an author out there listening who's, only ever thought of traditional publishing or only ever thought of self-publishing, what type of book would be a good fit for a small press, particularly a press like Renaissance?
Well, we have 4 people on the committee, and they each have radically different tastes. So we have a very eclectic collection of titles. And our only requirement when we get a manuscript is someone has to fall in love with it and be willing to defend it no matter what. So I know that's really, really wide and at the same time really, really narrow, but it is what it is. So we have people who really, really like science fiction and fantasy. We have people who love romance and mystery. We have people who like more literary books, literary in the sense of literary fiction genre. Mm-hmm. But basically that's it. If your book catches the attention and the love of one of our acquisitions committee members, then that's it. We go and publish it. We do have, we're not a huge team of editors. The books go through 3 to 5 edits. So if your book is as polished as it can be, it really, really helps. We have refused books in the past that we really liked because they were just not ready to be published yet, because there was too many structural things that needed to be worked on. So make sure that before you send your manuscript that other people have read it, beta readers, or if you have a critique circle, or both if you can. So, that it's as good as it can be before you send it. But that's it.
I know that something that you also bring to the table as a press is your legal expertise, correct? I think I remember you even saying, you've looked at contracts offered to authors from other publishers and warned authors away from certain things. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know certainly from my perspective, I don't know anything about the legality of signing contracts or whatnot,
I have been looking at copyright law for a long time. I don't have any formal education on it, but I have been reading about it for a good 20 years. And I've been really, really interested in how it's developing and how contracts between authors and publishers are changing, especially with digital publishing and ebooks, because it used to be that a contract would run until the print run was sold. But ebooks have changed that completely because and print on demand as well, because now there's no print run. It just ends. It never goes past that. There's also, I've been kind of keeping up with things like Writer Beware and Absolute Right Water Cooler and then things like that. And I think if you spend enough time, you can find out quite a bit. But what has really made my education for me is I've been a writing coach for the past 10, 12 years. And I've seen a lot of people be offered contracts. And I've seen the way that in just the past 10 years, it's changed a lot. And there are new publishing houses. There are new things that keep coming up now, like non-compete clauses. For example, there's a lot of publishers who are now demanding that you not publish any other work while your contract is in effect with them. And that basically bars you from self-publishing or submitting any manuscript to another press as long as you have a contract with these people. And sometimes the same contract asks for life of copyright, which is 50 years after you're dead. So you sell a book to this press and you can't ever publish again. It's, there are a lot of scary things out there. And if you're not careful about reading your contract, you can lose a lot. And sometimes it's not even that these presses are evil or, want to ban you from doing things. Sometimes they just don't really know what they're doing.
Sure, they're probably just using boilerplate contracts that they've pulled from somewhere else, right? Or
exactly.
That they hired a lawyer to throw together, yeah.
So, but you have to be careful about what your contract says, and you have to read things very, very carefully and understand what is implied in the contract.
Say I'm listening to this podcast, I'm an author, maybe I've got my first manuscript, I'm really confident in it, I think it's spectacular. And say I want to see it in a bookstore someday. Do you think I should start querying agents and shoot for the top and try to get a New York deal, and then, as I get no's, like work my way down towards smaller publishers? Or do you think that's a waste of time trying to go the traditional route, trying to be the one in a million when there might be a great publisher, in your hometown that you could go to and have a book out in the next month that's maybe not at Chapters, but that you're selling at local events? So I guess what I'm asking you is the journey. What journey do you recommend for aspiring authors who are like shooting for the stars in terms of what they want to do with their career?
Honestly, it really depends on what kind of career you want. Like, if you want to quit your day job and get a huge six-figure advance and everything, well, sure, go with an agent. I mean, the odds are like the lottery, but you might win it. People do. So, but if you want to start slow and have maybe a more personal touch, and if you're like me and you just write and write and write, and then you just want to put books out there so that you can move on to the next thing and maybe grow from there, then smaller presses are definitely your best bet, because you have a much higher chance of being published with them, because, we do receive a lot of manuscripts, but we don't receive something like 15,000 a year, like a big New York publisher, and I'm probably underestimating how much they received. And, out of these tens of thousands of manuscripts, they'll publish one or two. So, you have a much higher chance of getting published with a smaller press, and then you have the more control over it. And you don't care about what your book looks like. There are so many pros and cons to both sides that it's very hard to say. I think people should evaluate what kind of publishing experience they want to have and go with that. But for sure, I think that if you have past publishing experience, you're more likely to be picked up by an agent or a big publishing house.
In which case you're saying perhaps you do want to kind of start smaller and then build up rather than shoot for the sky and get rejected.
Yes.
Is that right?
Exactly.
Interesting. Yeah. What are your timelines like? Because I know, one of the huge benefits of self-publishing is that, I can I always tell people, like, I could take this interview, upload it to like rev.com and get a transcript of it within 24 hours, upload that transcript to Amazon, and have a Kindle book in 2 days, so, basically, like, this is Saturday, right? So we could turn this interview into a book that's on sale on Amazon probably by next weekend. Whereas getting a traditional publishing deal is probably going to be, a 2-year project from when you even get an agent to when that book is finally on shelves. With a small press, what's the timelines look like there? I'm assuming it's somewhere in between.
Yeah, it's definitely in between. Like, we've never taken 2 years to finish a book. But we would never take 2 days either, because we feel really, really strongly about having good edits in the book. The best timeline is usually 4 to 6 months, and that's usually what it's been between a contract and when the book is published. And we often try to target a good period of the year to put something out too. Like, if you're doing something in January or December, that's not a really good time to launch a book. We try to make an event for our book launches, usually in October. Yeah, so it's about 6 months to a year, depending on how much work needs to be done on the book.
That's a really good topic, actually, to bring up, because I think one of the big misconceptions that people have about traditional publishing is that getting a book contract is going to solve all your marketing needs, and you can just go write your next book. Meanwhile, your publisher is going to go and market your book for you. I think that's in today's market, it's pretty clear that a lot of the onus is on the author themselves to market their own work, regardless of whether they're traditional or self-published. What sort of marketing assistance or help does Renaissance provide to its authors?
Well, for one, we go to all the shows. We go to about 12 shows a year. So we go to all these shows and we put out our books. We do have consignment deals with some of the local bookstores here. We do a lot of online promotions. We do things like book trailers. We do contests. We send the book blurbs and review copies to a lot of online blogs and all that. So we do a fair bit of promotion for our authors. Usually the only thing that we really ask for the authors to do is to come to the shows once in a while. It doesn't cost them anything to just sit at the table for a few hours. But the people at fairs and cons really enjoy buying the book if the author signs it for them. So it's just more of a, it's more enticing. But we do a fair bit of promotion, which a lot of medium and larger publishers don't do anymore. In fact, what I've seen crop up in contracts lately is you have a marketing clause where you're expected, upon signing the contract, to have a written marketing plan for your own book that you submit to the publisher.
Which again is like a whole other job,
Yeah.
right? Becoming a marketer in addition to becoming an author. Awesome. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I think it's really important for authors to know the options that are available out there for them. As you said, whether you're going to self-publish or whether you're going to go with a small press or whether you're going to go traditional is so dependent on the journey you want as an author and what you want to do with your career and with your book. So I think it's really important that we let authors know about these options that are out there that are not just sending 50 query letters and hearing no, every once a week for a year, or taking it all on your back and doing it all yourself. I think that the medium press and small press option that, something like Renaissance offers is, so fantastic for a lot of authors. And I think it's important that they know about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there any takeaways that you want to leave the listeners with? Maybe let them know where they can find out more about Renaissance Press and how they might be able to pitch to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can check out our website, which is renaissancebookpress.com. So all of our submission guidelines are on the website. We are actually open for submissions right now. So if you want to look at what we're doing and see the books that we're publishing, because that's also something you should definitely look at, whether or not you like the look of the books and whether you think your book will fit with us. Look at our website and look at our submissions guidelines. And we'll also probably be taking pitches at ConCom this year again, which is happening in September. And we're on Facebook. Connecting through Facebook is a great way to get in touch with us because we're very responsive to messages and posts.
Fantastic. So how many books have you guys published now?
10, actually.
All right. Into double digits.
Yeah. And we've got an 11th one coming this summer, actually, probably in July.
All right. What's that title?
It's called A Study in Ether, and it's the first in a series by Éric Desmarais.
Fantastic. All right. Well, hopefully all the listeners out there will go check out Renaissance Press and pick up some of those books because you guys are doing fantastic work. And, thank you so much to you guys for the friendship you've offered me and the support. I've learned a lot from you guys, and it's been really cool as an indie author to get the opportunity to rub shoulders with you guys and see what you're doing. And, as I said, I think the reason I wanted to do this interview is because the more time I spend with you guys, the more I recognize the value of what you guys are offering to authors. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much.
So there you have it, my interview with Carolyn Frechette of Renaissance Press. Hopefully, if you weren't aware of the amazing world of small press publishers out there, that this interview provided some interesting insight for you into another option that you might want to consider in your publishing career. Now, here's the thing, guys. Would you like someone that you could talk with about the different publishing options? Someone that you could bounce your manuscript off or provide you with accountability while you're in the drafting process? Well, if so, I would love to work with you. I have a one-on-one coaching program. I also have a group coaching program where you can join with a number of other authors working on their books and get the support and accountability that you need to be successful in your author career. If you're interested in that, please pop by my website, kevintjohns.com. There's tons of information there about my group coaching, my one-on-one coaching, as well as my masterclass, The Novel Writer's Blueprint. I'd love to hear from you as well, so feel free to shoot me an email at kevin@kevintjohns.com. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'll see you on the next episode of The Writing Coach.